Late afternoon light cut across the study in long gold bars. A framed photograph hung on the wall behind a heavy oak desk. A woman's face, caught mid-turn, unaware of the camera. The print had yellowed slightly at the edges. Wu Jin stood in front of it, hands in his pockets, staring like he did most days around this time. The door opened behind him. "Sir." A guard, out of breath. "The woman from the taxi. She says this is the wrong address." Wu Jin didn't turn around right away. "Bring her in." Footsteps. A second set hesitant, uneven on the marble. He turned. Zarya stood in the doorway, one hand still gripping the strap of her bag. Jet lag written all over her face. She looked at him, then past him, then at the photo on the wall. She stopped breathing for a second. It was her. The exact tilt of her chin. The small gold hoop she was wearing right now. "That's not possible," she said. Wu Jin's jaw tightened. 7 years, he said. "I've had your face on my wall for 7 years. And you're telling me you just walked in here by accident? Before we get started, are you watching solo or with someone? Where are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments." Welcome to Afro-Korean Scope, where every story is an unforgettable adventure. 7 years earlier, Wu Jin ran down a narrow alley 3 blocks from his brother's apartment. Shoes slipping on wet pavement, sirens already screaming somewhere behind him. He'd gotten the call 12 minutes ago. 12 minutes too late. Police tape stretched across the alley mouth. An officer put a hand up. Wu Jin shoved past him anyway. "That's my brother," he said. "That's my brother." Min-ho lay on the ground near a dumpster, one arm bent wrong, blood already pooling dark against the concrete. A paramedic knelt over him, already shaking her head at another paramedic, before Wu Jin got close enough to see it for himself. Wu Jin dropped to his knees beside the body. He didn't cry. Not yet. He just stared, hands hovering over his brother's chest, like he couldn't decide if touching him would make it more real or less. "Sir, you can't be here," an officer said, pulling at his shoulder. Wu Jing didn't move. Across the street, half hidden behind a parked delivery truck, a security camera bolted to a convenience store awning kept recording. It caught the paramedics. It caught the police tape. And for 4 seconds, blurry and distant, it caught a woman standing on the opposite corner, watching the whole thing unfold before she turned and walked away fast, like she didn't want to be seen watching. Nobody noticed her at the time. Not the police. Not the paramedics. Wu Jin found the footage 9 days later, going through everything himself, because the official report already called it a robbery gone wrong, and he didn't believe a word of it. He froze the frame on her face, printed it, framed it. 7 years, every lead dead, every private investigator he hired, eventually gave up or got paid to disappear quietly. The woman in the photo became less of a witness and more of a ghost he talked to, when the house was empty. Until this afternoon, when a guard radioed up from the gate, saying a taxi had dropped off a woman who insisted she had the wrong address, and Wu Jin walked downstairs, expecting an inconvenience. Back in the study, Zarya hadn't moved from the doorway. "I've never been to Korea before this week," she said. "I swear to you, I don't know what that photo is, but it's not." "Look at it again," Wu Jin said. She did. Her stomach turned over. "That's not me," she said, quieter now, less certain. "It's you." He walked closer, slow, deliberate, like he was afraid moving too fast would make her disappear. "Same face, same jaw, same earring you're wearing right now. Coincidences exist. Not this exact one." His voice cracked slightly, the first real crack since she'd walked in. "Not for 7 years." Zarya took a step back toward the door. A guard shifted his weight, blocking it without being obvious about it. "Am I being kept here?" she asked. Wu Jin didn't answer right away. "I need you to stay," he said. "Just until I understand how this happened." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now." She looked past him at the photograph one more time, at her own face frozen 7 years younger than she remembered ever looking, in a place she was certain she'd never been. "I want my phone back," she said. "And I want to call someone." Wu Jin nodded once, slow. "You can call whoever you want." He didn't say the calls wouldn't go through. Not yet. The guest room they gave her that night had better furniture than her actual apartment back home. A wide bed, fresh linens, a small vase of white flowers on the dresser like someone had planned for a guest instead of an accident. Zarya sat on the edge of the bed and tried her phone. One bar, then none. She walked toward the window, held it up, watched the signal bounce between nothing and nothing. A soft knock at the door. An older woman stepped in, without waiting for an answer, carrying a tray with tea, avoiding eye contact the way staff do in houses where eye contact means something. "Drink," the woman said, setting the tray down. Her English was careful, practiced. "Thank you." Zaria studied her face. "Can I ask you something?" The woman's hands stilled on the tray. "Is he dangerous?" Zaria asked. "The man downstairs?" The woman glanced at the door, then back at Zaria, voice dropping lower. "Just answer his questions," she said. "Don't ask yours." She straightened, smoothed her apron. "That's all I can tell you." She left before Zaria could ask anything else, the door clicking shut behind her, with a sound too soft to be an accident. Zaria sat back down on the bed, tea untouched, staring at her own reflection in the dark window glass, trying to understand how a wrong address had turned into a locked gate, a dead man's photograph, and a man downstairs who looked at her like she was something he'd been waiting 7 years to find. She thought about calling her sister right then, screaming into the phone if the signal ever came back, telling her to call the embassy, call anyone, get her out. But something kept her sitting there instead. Some instinct that told her the danger in this house wasn't pointed at her. Not really, even if she couldn't explain why she believed that yet. Downstairs, Wu Jin sat alone in the study long after the house had gone quiet, staring at the same photograph he'd stared at for 7 years, except now, the face in it had a voice, had fear in her eyes, had insisted on her own truth without flinching, even when he'd given her every reason to. He didn't sleep that night either. Morning light came in through the guest room curtains, and Zaria was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, running through the last 24 hours, like a movie she couldn't rewind. A knock. Wu Jin, this time, not staff. "You're up early," he said. "Hard to sleep in a house I can't leave." He didn't argue the point. He stepped inside, leaving the door open behind him, a small gesture she noticed, and filed away. "I want to show you something," he said. "You don't have to say anything, just look." He led her down a hallway lined with photographs, family portraits, formal and stiff, the kind taken for anniversaries and funerals rather than joy. Near the end, one photo stood apart. 2 boys, maybe 10 and 13, grinning at a beach, sunburned and happy in a way the rest of the hallway wasn't. "That's Min Ho," Wu Jin said, tapping the younger boy. "My brother." Was? He said it flat, no flinch, like he'd practiced saying it 1,000 times, until it stopped hurting on the surface. He wanted nothing to do with any of this. He gestured vaguely at the house, the staff, the whole apparatus around them. Opened a small bookstore instead. Barely broke even. He was happier broke than any of us have ever been rich. Zaria studied the photo. What happened to him? Someone killed him behind his own building. Police called it a robbery. Wu Jin's jaw worked. Nothing was taken. His wallet was still in his pocket. "And you don't believe the robbery story. I believe someone wanted it to look like one." They kept walking. He stopped in front of a small home office, sparse compared to the study downstairs. A desk, a single chair, a wall of nothing but blank space, where a photograph clearly used to hang, before someone took it down. "This was his room, whenever he stayed here," Wu Jin said. "I haven't touched it in 7 years." Zaria stood in the doorway, arms crossed, not fully inside. "Why show me this?" "Because you keep saying you've never been here." He turned to face her fully. "I need you to understand what you'd be lying about, if you were lying. This isn't a story to me. I'm not lying." Her voice came out sharper than she meant. "I don't know what you want me to say. I was in the US 7 years ago. I can prove it, if you just let me call someone." "Prove it then." He stepped back, gestured toward the hallway exit. "There's a landline in the study. Nobody's stopping you from calling anyone you want." She followed him down, half expecting another obstacle, another excuse. There wasn't one. She dialed her sister's number from memory, hands steadier than she expected. 3 rings. Voicemail. She tried again. Same result. "Try your employer," Wu Jin said, watching her from across the room, arms crossed, unreadable. She did. Straight to voicemail again. "Time difference," she muttered, more to herself than him. "It's still early there. Try again in a few hours," he said. "I'm not stopping you." She set the phone down slowly, unsettled by how easy he'd made it, how little resistance there actually was, which somehow felt worse than if he'd fought her on it. That afternoon, she found herself back in the small kitchen off the main hall, the same housekeeper from the night before, moving quietly between counters, humming something low under her breath. "You don't have to serve me," Zaria said. I can get my own tea. The woman glanced up, surprised, then almost smiled. Not many guests say that. I'm not really a guest. The woman set 2 cups down anyway, one across from the other, and gestured for Zarya to sit. He's not like his father, the woman said quietly, without being asked. Or his uncle before that. That's supposed to make me feel better. It should, the woman poured. His father would have already made you disappear by now. Wu Jing just wants answers. Zarya wrapped both hands around the warm cup. You've been here a long time, since before he was born. The woman's eyes softened, just slightly. I watched him grow up angry about everything he was handed. He didn't want this house, didn't want the men outside the gate, didn't want any of it. Then why does he still run it? Because someone killed his brother, and nobody else was going to make sure it mattered. She said it simply, like a fact rather than an opinion. He's not looking for a villain in you. He's looking for the truth. There's a difference, if you're patient enough to see it. Zarya didn't answer right away. She looked out the small kitchen window, toward the gate she couldn't get past, thinking about a man upstairs who'd shown her his dead brother's untouched room, instead of threatening her, who'd handed her a phone with no real intention of stopping the call. What's your name? Zarya asked. Halmoni will do, the woman said, smiling for real this time. Everyone calls me that. That evening, Wu Jin found Zarya on the small balcony off the guest room, watching the last color drain out of the sky, over the wall that boxed in the whole property. You could have knocked, she said, without turning around. I did. You didn't answer. She glanced back at him, something unreadable passing over her face. Halmoni says you're not like your father. Halmoni talks too much. She's not wrong, though. Zarya leaned against the railing. You could have just locked me in a room and left me there. You didn't. I'm not interested in scaring you. He stepped up beside her, careful to leave space between them. I'm interested in understanding how a woman with no connection to this country ended up standing on a street corner the night my brother died. I don't have an answer for you. I know. His voice dropped, quieter now. But I keep looking at you, and some part of me keeps hoping you'll remember something I've spent 7 years trying to find. Zarya studied his face in the fading light. Not the Mafia boss from the study downstairs. Not the man who'd kept her behind a gate she couldn't unlock. Just someone exhausted by grief he'd never let himself fully feel. What if I never remember anything? She asked. What happens to me then? Wu Jin didn't answer for a long moment. Then I have to find another way to let you go, he said. Because keeping you here without an answer isn't justice. It's just cruelty with better manners. Something in his voice made her believe him, against every instinct telling her she shouldn't. She stayed on that balcony a while longer after he left, watching the gate below, thinking about how strange it was that the most honest conversation she'd had in days had happened with a man everyone outside these walls would call a monster. 2 days into her stay, Zarya's signal returned just enough for a single text to crawl through. Her sister, 3 messages stacked on top of each other, each one more panicked than the last. Where are you? Call me back. I'm calling the embassy tomorrow if I don't hear from you. She showed the screen to Wu Jin before he could ask what was wrong. Your sister, he said, reading it over her shoulder. She's not bluffing. She'll actually do it. Wu Jin exhaled slowly. Then call her, tonight. Tell her whatever you need to, so she doesn't put a diplomatic incident on top of everything else happening in this house. You're not going to stop me? I told you I wouldn't. He handed her the study phone again. I meant it the first time too, she called, and her sister picked up before the first ring finished. Zarya, oh my God, where have you? I'm okay, Zarya said quickly, cutting through the panic before it built into something unstoppable. I got mixed up with the wrong address, and it turned into something complicated, but I'm safe. I promise you I'm safe. Complicated how? You've been gone 3 days. I can't explain all of it right now. I need you to trust me for a little while longer. Zarya glanced at Wu Jin, who'd stepped back to give her space, arms crossed, watching the floor rather than her face. Please don't call the embassy yet. Give me until the end of the week. Her sister was quiet for a long moment. If I don't hear from you by Friday, I'm calling everyone I can think of. Friday, Zarya agreed. I promise. She hung up, chest tight with the weight of a countdown she hadn't asked for. Friday, Wu Jin repeated. That's not much time to solve a 7-year-old murder. I know. I'll have someone loop in her employer too, he said. Enough to keep them calm without exposing more than necessary. I don't want outside pressure forcing decisions before we're ready to make them. Zaria appreciated that he said we. She didn't examine why yet. Later that afternoon, restless and unwilling to sit in the guest room counting down days, she wandered into the small library off the east wing on her own, drawn to a low shelf of albums she'd noticed but not yet opened. Nobody stopped her. Nobody seemed to be watching this part of the house as closely as everywhere else. She pulled out an album near the bottom, older than the rest, spine cracked from age rather than use. Family portraits, formal, dated decades back in careful handwriting. She flipped through slowly, more out of curiosity than any real expectation of finding something. Near the back, a photograph slid loose and landed face up in her lap. A woman, younger, laughing at something off camera, standing outside a modest apartment building. The resemblance hit before her brain fully processed why. The jaw, the eyes. Close enough to be unsettling. Zaria carried the photo straight to Wu Jin, who was in the study reviewing shipment logs with the kind of focus that looked more like avoidance than actual work. "Who is this?" she asked, setting it in front of him. He studied it for a long moment. "I don't know. I've never seen this page of the album before. Look at her face." He looked, really looked this time. "This isn't dated the same year as the murder," he said slowly, checking a small handwritten note in the corner. "This is older. Years older. So it's not me." "No." He sat back. "But it might be someone connected to you." Zaria stared at the photograph like it might rearrange itself into an explanation if she looked hard enough. "I need to call my mother," she said suddenly. "Not my sister. My mother." The call connected on the second ring this time, static crackling over a line that had apparently decided to cooperate. "Zaria?" Her mother's voice, tight with worry. "Your sister said you weren't answering. Where are you?" "Mom, I need you to answer something honestly." Zaria kept her eyes on Wu Jin across the room, who stood near the window pretending not to listen. "Do we have family in Korea?" Silence on the line. Long enough that Zaria almost repeated the question. "Why are you asking me that?" Her mother said finally, voice gone flat in a way Zaria didn't like. "Because I found a photo. A woman who looks like she could be related to us, standing outside some apartment building I've never seen." Another silence, shorter this time, but heavier. "Your great-aunt moved there in the 80s, her mother said finally. "Married a man there. We didn't stay close after your grandmother passed. There was a falling out. I don't like to talk about it. Did she have kids? Grandkids? I don't know, Zaria. We stopped speaking before you were even born." Her mother's voice cracked slightly. "Why does this matter right now?" "What's going on? Your sister's worried sick." Zaria glanced at Wu Jin again. He held her gaze, steady, patient, giving her the space to decide how much to say. "I'm safe," Zaria said finally. "I promise. I just needed to know if I had family here." "Zaria, I'll call you tomorrow. I love you." She hung up before her mother could push further, before the questions multiplied into something she didn't have answers for yet. Wu Jin crossed the room slowly. A falling out. Apparently, Zaria set the phone down, hands not quite steady now. "Nobody in my family ever mentioned a great aunt in Korea. Not once." "Families bury things," Wu Jin said quietly. "Mine included. If this story's got your attention already, that's exactly where we want it. Hit like, drop a comment on what you think this hidden family connection means for everything else going on, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Scope so you don't miss what happens next." That afternoon, one of Wu Jin's men, younger, nervous, the kind of nervous that came from being new rather than being scared, knocked on the study door with a folder tucked under his arm. "Sir, you asked me to pull the original case file from 7 years ago." Wu Jin took it, flipped it open on the desk. Zaria stood beside him without asking permission this time, and he didn't tell her to step back. "There's a gap here," Wu Jin said, frowning at a page. "The security footage log shows 6 cameras active that night. Only 5 were ever submitted to police. Maybe the 6th one malfunctioned," the younger man offered. "Or someone pulled it before it ever reached the report." Wu Jin's jaw tightened. "Who compiled this file originally?" The younger man hesitated. "That would have been handled directly by, say the name, Director Choi. Your father's old head of security. He personally oversaw the investigation before you took over." Wu Jin went very still. "Choi still works for us," Zaria said carefully, watching his face. "He's my most trusted advisor," Wu Jin said, voice quiet in a way that made the words sound worse than if he'd shouted them. "He helped me investigate this case for years, personally. Which means if a camera went missing, He would have known exactly where it went. Wu Jin closed the folder slowly, hand flat on top of it, like he needed to physically hold himself in place. 7 years. He sat across from me for 7 years, telling me every lead had gone cold. You don't know it was him, Zarya said. Not yet. No. Wu Jin looked up at her, something hard settling behind his eyes. But I know exactly who to ask. That night, Zarya couldn't sleep. She sat by the window again, phone useless in her lap, replaying the photograph of the woman outside the apartment building, the crack in her mother's voice, the way Wu Jin's whole posture had changed, the second a name came up that he clearly hadn't expected. A soft knock! Halmoni! Carrying tea again, though it was well past the hour for it. You should sleep, Halmoni said, setting the cup down. Can't. Zarya wrapped her hands around the warmth anyway. Halmoni, do you know a man named Director Choi? The older woman's hands stilled for just a second, the same way they had the first night when Zarya asked if Wu Jin was dangerous. I know him, Halmoni said, carefully. What's he like? Halmoni was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words the way people do when they've decided something is safer left unsaid, but can't quite manage to say nothing at all. He's the kind of man everyone trusts, she said finally, because he's never once given anyone a reason to think twice. She picked up the empty tray, moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. That should scare you more than it comforts you. She left before Zarya could ask what she meant, the door clicking shut, the same soft, deliberate way it always did. Wu Jin found Choi in the East Wing office the next morning, the older man exactly where he always was, reading glasses low on his nose, files stacked with military precision, a face that had never once betrayed anything in the 15 years Wu Jin had known him. You wanted to see me, Choi said, not looking up. The case file from Minho's murder. Wu Jin set the folder down on the desk between them. There were 6 cameras active that night. Only 5 made it into evidence. Choi's pen paused. Just barely. Over the page he'd been signing. That was 7 years ago, Choi said. You're bringing this up now? I'm bringing it up because a woman walked into my house 3 days ago wearing the exact face from that missing camera's footage. Wu Jin kept his voice level, watching every microshift in the older man's expression. And I want to know who decided that 6th camera never mattered. Choi finally looked up. His eyes were steady, unreadable, the same calm that had made him valuable for 2 decades. I compiled that file myself, Choi said. If a camera's footage didn't make it in, it's because it showed nothing useful. That's not your call to make. It was, at the time. Your father trusted my judgment completely. Choi set his pen down slowly. Are you accusing me of something, Wu Jing? The question hung in the room, deliberate, daring him to say it out loud without proof. I'm asking you to pull whatever's left of that footage, Wu Jin said instead. Today. Choi held his gaze a moment longer than necessary. Of course, he said finally. I'll have it by evening. Wu Jin left the office without another word, but something in his chest had gone cold, in a way it hadn't in 7 years. Not grief this time. Suspicion, sharp and unfamiliar, aimed at someone who'd sat across from him at every family dinner since he was a teenager. Zarya found him an hour later in Minho's untouched office, standing in the same spot as before, staring at the same blank wall where a photograph clearly used to hang. You look like you saw a ghost, she said. Maybe I did. Wu Jin didn't turn around. Choi didn't deny compiling the file. He didn't deny cutting the 6th camera either. He just made it sound reasonable. Do you believe him? I don't know anymore. He finally faced her. That's the part that scares me. 7 years, and I don't know if the man closest to me lied to my face the entire time. Zarya reached out, not quite touching him, just closing the distance slightly. You don't know that yet. No, his voice softened. But I know you're the only person in this house who's told me the truth since the day you walked in, and you had every reason not to. Choi delivered the footage that evening, exactly as promised. Grainy, degraded, time-stamped correctly, 6 minutes of a nearly empty alley that showed absolutely nothing useful. Wu Jin watched it twice, jaw tight, saying nothing. There, Choi said, standing in the doorway of the study. 6 minutes of an empty street. Just as I said. Convenient, Wu Jin said quietly. Or accurate. Choi's tone didn't change, not even slightly. Not everything is a conspiracy, Wu Jin. Sometimes a camera just doesn't catch anything. After Choi left, Zaria sat down beside Wu Jin at the desk, watching the same 6 minutes loop a third time. Wait, she said suddenly, leaning forward. Go back 10 seconds. Wu Jin rewound the footage. A shadow moved briefly across the bottom corner of the frame. Barely there. Easy to miss. Gone almost as fast as it appeared. That's not nothing, Zaria said. Wu Jin paused the frame, zoomed as far as the resolution allowed. The shadow resolved into nothing more than a vague shape, no identifiable features, but the timing lined up exactly with the estimated time of the murder 2 streets over. Someone was here, Wu Jin said slowly, right before or right after, and whoever handed over this footage either didn't notice or didn't want anyone else to. You think Choi altered it? I think Choi's had 7 years and every opportunity to bury this properly. And instead, I'm looking at a shadow he either missed or thought was too small to matter. Wu Jin sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. Either way, it means he's not as careful as I always believed. Or he's not as loyal. Zaria watched him carefully. What happens now? Now I stop asking politely, Wu Jing said. And for the first time since she'd arrived, his voice carried something closer to the reputation that had built this entire house. Quiet, controlled, and absolutely certain. 2 days passed before anything moved again, and Zaria spent most of them in the small library off the east wing, going through what remained of Minho's personal things. Boxes Wu Jin had never opened, kept sealed since the funeral, because he said he wasn't ready, and apparently still wasn't, since he'd handed her the key without a second thought. She found the diary in the 3rd box, wedged between old bookstore receipts and a stack of unopened mail. It wasn't labeled, just a plain leather notebook, the kind you'd buy at any drugstore, filled with Minho's handwriting. Small, cramped, urgent, in places like he'd been writing fast to keep up with his own thoughts. She brought it straight to Wu Jin, who was in the study going over shipping manifests with a focus that looked more like avoidance than actual work. You need to see this, she said, setting it in front of him. He recognized the notebook immediately. His hands went still over it. I've never seen this before, he said. It was in the 3rd box, buried under receipts. Wu Jin opened it slowly, like it might fall apart if he moved too fast. The early entries were mundane. Bookstore inventory, a woman he'd been seeing, complaints about supply costs. Zaria watched his face change as he got further in, the pages closer to the date of his death. Read this one, he said finally, turning the notebook toward her, voice gone tight. The entry was dated 8 days before the murder. Found something in the shipping logs I wasn't supposed to see. Numbers don't match what's actually moving. Someone's been skimming for months, maybe longer. I confronted him about it today. He said I was imagining things. I know what I saw. Zaria's stomach turned. Confronted who? Wu Jin flipped forward, hands less steady now. He asked me not to say anything to Wu Jin yet. Said it would destroy the family if it came out this way. I told him I'd give him 1 week to fix it himself before I said anything. That was 3 days ago. The next entry, what dated the day of the murder, was shorter. Told him today his week was up. He didn't take it well. There was nothing after that. Wu Jin sat back, staring at the page like it might rearrange itself into something less devastating if he looked long enough. He never names him, Wu Jin said quietly. Not once in the whole book. But you know who he means. I think I do. Wu Jin closed the diary slowly, hand flat against the cover. Choi handled every financial log for this family for 2 decades. If anyone was skimming and needed a week to fix it quietly, it would have gone through him first. That's motive, Zaria said. Real motive. Not just a missing camera. It's motive, Wu Jin agreed, voice low. For a man I've trusted with my life since I was 19 years old. That evening, Wu Jin called a small, quiet meeting. Just himself, Choi, and 2 senior men who'd been with the family even longer than Choi had. Zaria wasn't invited, but she stood just outside the study door anyway, close enough to hear through the gap. I found Minho's diary, Wu Jin said. No preamble. A pause. Long enough that Zaria could picture Choi's face without seeing it. That's good, Choi said finally, voice careful. Does it mention anything useful? It mentions someone skimming from the shipping logs, someone he confronted a week before he died. Wu Jin's voice stayed level, dangerously level. Someone he gave a deadline to fix it quietly. Silence. You think that's me, Choi said. I think you handled every financial log in this family for 20 years. Wu Jin's chair scraped back, the sound sharp through the door. I think you cut a camera from the case file that might have shown someone in that alley the night he died. I think you've had 7 years to make sure I never connected either of those things. You're grieving, Choi said, voice gentler now, almost paternal. You're looking for someone to blame, because the not knowing is unbearable. I understand that better than anyone. Don't. Woo Jin's voice cracked. Finally, 7 years of restraint fracturing all at once. Don't stand there and tell me you understand grief while you're the reason I've had 7 years of it with no answers. I raised you after your father died, Choi said, voice rising now too, the calm finally slipping. I taught you everything you know about running this family, and you're going to accuse me based on a dead man's diary that doesn't even say my name? Then give me a reason to believe otherwise, Woo Jin said. Right now, because everything I have points at you, and the only thing missing is you telling me I'm wrong. The silence that followed lasted long enough that Zarya, still standing outside the door, felt her own heartbeat in her throat. I never meant for it to go that far, Choi said finally, voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for anyone to die. Inside the study, something shifted. Not violence, not shouting, just the terrible quiet of a confession, finally arriving 7 years too late. Say it again, Woo Jin said quietly. Slower. Choi's hands were shaking now, the composure of 20 years finally gone. I was skimming from the shipping accounts, small amounts at first. My daughter needed surgery. Your father wouldn't approve funding for, through family channels. I told myself I'd pay it back. And Min Ho found out. He found the discrepancy in the logs. He wasn't even looking for it. He just noticed the numbers didn't add up the way they should have. Choi's voice cracked. I begged him for time. He gave me a week. I meant to fix it. I swear to you, Woo Jin, I meant to fix it. But you didn't. I couldn't get the money back in time. Choi's shoulders sagged, all the careful posture of 2 decades collapsing at once. I went to talk to him again. Just to talk. I never meant. You were there, Woo Jin said, voice gone flat and cold. That night, you were in that alley. Choi didn't answer, which was answer enough. I panicked, he finally said. He said he was telling you everything in the morning. I grabbed him, just to stop him from walking away while I was still talking. He fell. He hit his head on the edge of the dumpster. His voice broke completely now. I didn't plan it. I swear on everything I have, I didn't plan it. But you staged it, Woo Jin said. You made it look like a robbery. You cut the camera that would have shown you there. You spent 7 years helping me investigate a murder you committed, sitting across from me at every family dinner since. Because if I told you the truth, you would have killed me, Choi said. Something like relief bleeding into his voice now that the worst of it was finally out. And some small, cowardly part of me thought I could still be useful to this family, even after what I did. Get out, Woo Jin said finally. Quiet, controlled. Don't run, don't call anyone, just wait in your quarters until I decide what happens next. Choi left without another word, his footsteps slow and unsteady down the hallway, past Zarya without ever seeing her. She found Woo Jin an hour later, still sitting at the desk, diary closed now, staring at nothing. You heard all of it, he said, without looking up. Most of it. He raised me, Woo Jin said quietly. After my father died, he was the one who taught me everything, how to run this family, how to survive in it. He finally looked at her, and he's the reason I've spent 7 years grieving a murder he committed himself. Zarya sat down across from him, close enough that their knees almost touched. Same as the morning with the photo albums. What happens now? She asked. Legally, in any normal world, he goes to prison. Woo Jin's jaw tightened. In this world, it's more complicated. The men outside that gate answer to me, because I've never once shown weakness. If I let this become public in the wrong way, it doesn't just end Choi, it destabilizes everything. So what do? I make sure he faces real consequences, Woo Jin said. Not the kind this family usually hands out. Actual consequences. Police, courts, a public trial, if that's what it takes to make it mean something. He looked at her steadily. Min Ho would have wanted that. He always wanted things done the right way, even when nobody around him did. That's not the easy road, Zarya said. No. Something in Woo Jin's face softened, just slightly. But you didn't take the easy road either, when you could have just kept insisting you didn't remember anything, and waited for me to let you go. You pushed. You found that photo. You found the shadow in the footage nobody else caught. He paused. You're the reason any of this came out at all. Zarya didn't know what to say to that, so she reached over instead and covered his hand with hers, the first time either of them had actually touched since she'd walked through that door believing she was in the wrong place entirely. I still don't know why that camera caught me, she said quietly. Not really me, but someone who looks enough like me that it changed everything. We'll find that answer too, Woojin said. I promise you that. Her sister's deadline still sat quietly in the back of her mind. Friday, 3 days away now. But for the first time since she'd arrived, the thought of leaving didn't come with the same urgency it had before. That evening, before either of them said anything about it out loud, Woojin called her sister himself, briefly, formally, explaining just enough. A family matter had connected them, nothing dangerous, a few more days needed, to buy the time without frightening her further. Zarya listened from the doorway, something settling in her chest at the sound of him handling it without being asked. If this story's got you sitting on the edge of your seat, that's exactly where we want you. Hit like, drop a comment on how you think this reckoning with Choi should actually play out, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Scope so you don't miss what happens next. The next morning brought a different kind of quiet to the house, not tense the way it had been, but heavy, the aftermath settling into every hallway. Choi's quarters had been quietly emptied by two of Woojin's most trusted men, his personal effects boxed and set aside for whatever came next. Woojin met with his senior circle at dawn, laying out exactly what would happen, a private handoff to police contacts he trusted to run it straight, no shortcuts, no family cleanup disguised as justice. Some of the older men in the room clearly wanted a different outcome, faster and quieter. Woojin shut that down without raising his voice, and nobody argued twice. By mid-morning, 2 detectives arrived at the gate, and Choi went with them without resistance, his composure returning just enough to walk out with something like dignity, though he didn't look back once. Zarya watched from the study window as the car pulled away down the long gravel drive. That's it? She asked, when Woojin joined her. That's the start of it. He stood close beside her, hands in his pockets. There'll be a trial, testimony. It won't be quick, and it won't be quiet, not entirely. But it'll be real. How do you feel? He considered the question honestly, which she appreciated more than a quick answer would have. Emptier than I expected, he said finally. I spent 7 years wanting exactly this moment, and now that it's happened, it doesn't feel like the ending I thought it would. Maybe because it isn't the ending, Zarya said. Maybe it's just the part where the story stops being about him. Woojin looked at her for a long moment. What's it about instead? She didn't answer right away. But she didn't step back either. That afternoon, with Choi gone and the house settling into an unfamiliar calm, Woojin brought Zarya back to the small library, back to the third box she'd first found the diary in. There's something else in here, he said, pulling out a slim folder she hadn't noticed before, tucked flat against the bottom. Inside were old letters, handwritten, addressed to Min-ho, from someone signing only as Imoba's aunt. Min-ho was close with someone your family lost touch with, Woojin said, scanning the first page. Your great-aunt, maybe, or her daughter. Zarya took the letters carefully, reading through them one by one. They were warm, ordinary. Updates about a small garden, a recipe for kimchi jjigae, a gentle scolding about Min-ho not visiting often enough. And near the bottom of the stack, a photograph fell loose. It was the same woman from the album. Younger, laughing, standing outside the same apartment building, but this time with a child beside her, maybe 5 or 6 years old, unmistakably related to both women in the frame. That's her, Zarya whispered. That's the woman from the shelf photo, and that has to be her daughter, which would make her your cousin, Zarya finished. Second cousin, probably. If the timeline lines up. Woojin studied the child's face carefully, then looked back at Zarya. The resemblance wasn't identical, but it was close enough to explain everything. The photograph on his wall, the face on the security camera 7 years ago, a family thread nobody had bothered to trace until now. Min-ho stayed in touch with her, Woojin said quietly. All this time, and nobody in our family ever mentioned it to me, and nobody in mine ever mentioned her to me either. Zarya set the letters down carefully. Do you think she's still alive? Still nearby? There's an address on the last letter, Woojin said, dated less than a year before Min-ho died. Zarya looked up at him, something steadying in her chest despite everything they'd just been through. I want to find her, she said. Not for the case, not for any of this, Just because I didn't know I had family here, and now I do. Wu Jing nodded slowly. Then we find her. They drove out that same afternoon, the estate shrinking in the rearview mirror, the tension between them shifting into something quieter, gentler. Neither of them naming it directly, but both aware of the way his hand rested near the gear shift, close enough to hers that the distance between them had shrunk considerably since the first night she'd stood frozen in his study doorway. Friday's coming, Zarya said, watching the city give way to smaller roads. My sister's going to want real answers soon. Tell her the truth, Wu Jing said. All of it, if you want. There's no reason to keep secrets anymore. Choi's the only thing that ever needed hiding in this house, and he's gone now. All of it, Zarya repeated. That's a lot to explain over the phone. Then don't explain it over the phone. He glanced at her, something careful and hopeful in his expression. Bring her here. Let her see it for herself. Zarya hadn't expected the invitation, and something about the ease with which he offered it, no hesitation, no calculation behind it, told her more about how far they'd both come than anything either of them could have said out loud. The address led them to a modest neighborhood an hour outside the city, rows of small houses with well-kept gardens, nothing like the estate they'd driven from. Zarya's hands were unsteady on the car door before they'd even parked. You don't have to do this today, Wu Jin said gently. I do, she said. I've waited my whole life without knowing this existed. I'm not waiting one more day. They walked up to the door together. Zarya knocked before she could talk herself out of it. The woman who answered was older now, gray threading through dark hair, but unmistakably the same face from the photographs, the same jaw, the same eyes Zarya had spent days staring at on a mansion wall without understanding why. The woman looked at Zarya for a long moment, confusion giving way slowly to something like recognition, though they'd never met. You look just like her, the woman said softly, in careful English, one hand rising to her mouth. Just like my daughter did, at your age. I think, Zarya said, voice unsteady, we might be family. The woman's eyes filled, and she stepped back from the door, not in fear, but to make room. Come inside, she said. Please, there's so much I never got to tell anyone. Inside, over tea that tasted nothing like the careful, formal cups served in Wu Jin's house, the woman told them everything. How she'd emigrated decades ago. How a disagreement over money and old family pride had split her from Zarya's grandmother permanently. How she'd stayed close instead with Min Ho, a young man from a family she'd otherwise wanted nothing to do with, simply because he'd shown up at her door one day, looking for the aunt his own family never talked about, curious rather than obligated. He was a good boy, the woman said, dabbing at her eyes. Kind. Nothing like I expected from that family. No offense, she added, glancing at Wu Jin, who accepted it without flinching. None taken, Wu Jin said quietly. He was better than the rest of us. Everyone who knew him says the same thing. My daughter used to visit him at that little bookstore of his, the woman continued. She admired him, looked up to him like an older brother, even though they weren't really related that way at all. She paused, something clouding her expression. She was in the city the night he died. I remember because she called me after, crying, saying she'd seen the police outside his building, but was too afraid to go closer, afraid of getting involved in something she didn't understand. Zarya's breath caught. That's why the camera caught someone who looked like me. It wasn't me at all. It was your daughter. She looks so much like you, the woman said, studying Zarya's face again like she still couldn't quite believe it. I always thought it was just family blood doing what family blood does. I never imagined it would matter this much, this many years later. Is she still nearby? Wu Jin asked gently. Would she be willing to talk to us, officially, if it comes to that? She moved to Busan for work, but yes. The woman nodded, wiping her eyes again. She still talks about that night sometimes. Says she always felt guilty for not going to the police herself. I think she'd want the chance to finally say what she saw. Later that evening, driving back toward the estate under a sky gone deep orange at the horizon, Zarya sat quietly for a long stretch, processing everything at once. The family she never knew existed, the cousin who'd witnessed the murder's aftermath and carried the guilt alone for 7 years, the strange, winding path that had led her from a mistyped address to an entire buried history finally coming into the light. You okay? Wu Jin asked, glancing over. I don't know yet, she admitted. I came here to do a 2-week marketing contract. I didn't come here to find family, or solve a murder, or... She stopped herself, unsure how to finish that sentence honestly. Or, Woojin prompted gently, or fall for the man who kept me behind a locked gate, she said finally, half a laugh escaping despite everything. That part I definitely wasn't expecting. Woojin's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, something warm breaking through the exhaustion on his face for the first time in days. I wasn't expecting it either. I spent 7 years staring at a photograph, telling myself I just needed answers. I never once considered I might end up caring about the woman in it more than the mystery she represented. That's a lot to say out loud, Zaria said quietly. I've had enough silence in that house to last a lifetime, Woojin said. I'm done keeping things buried. Friday arrived 2 days later, and Zaria's sister called exactly when she said she would, voice sharp with worry, until Zaria finally laid out the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. A wrongful murder finally solved. A family she never knew, reconnecting after decades apart, and a man she wasn't ready to leave just yet. Though she didn't say that last part directly, not because she was hiding it, but because some things still felt too new and fragile to hand over the phone to someone who hadn't lived through any of it beside her. That night, back at the estate, Woojin led her into the study one last time, toward the wall where her photograph had hung for 7 years, faded and framed, like a grief he'd never let himself finish. He took it down carefully, setting it aside without ceremony, without the heaviness it used to carry. I want to put something else here, he said, if you're willing. He held up his phone, a photo taken just that morning on the balcony. The two of them, unposed, caught mid-laugh, at something neither of them could later remember what. Taken with her full knowledge this time. Nothing hidden, nothing stolen. A taxi took me to the wrong address, Zaria said softly, watching him hang the new photo in the same spot the old one had occupied for so long. And somehow, it brought me exactly where I was supposed to be all along. Woojin turned to face her fully. 7 years of grief and suspicion and loneliness, finally settling into something that looked for the first time like peace. Maybe it wasn't the wrong address after all, he said quietly. Outside the window, the last light of evening spread gold across the estate grounds, the same color it had been the very first afternoon she arrived. Except now, standing beside him, nothing about it felt like an accident anymore. If this story moved you, you already know what to do. Hit like, tell us in the comments what part hit you hardest, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Scope, because this is only the beginning of the stories waiting for you here.